Welcome to the Brimful Podcast. I'm Pamela Tessmann, an IBCLC, a mother of two, and former childbirth educator, doula, and ACE. I share evidence-based tips and stories on infant feeding and the perinatal period. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, so please always see your healthcare provider if you have concerns. Be sure to follow me at brim.familycare on social media or visit my website at brimfamilycare.com. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Brimful Podcast. Today, I am really excited to be co-hosting with Erin Dykstra, who is an IBCLC at Sweet Spot Lactation based in Kelowna, BC. Thanks for joining me today, Erin.
Thanks, Pamela. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
So today we decided we wanted to talk about something that's been on our minds. I think a lot of IBCLCs are thinking about this a lot because there's a lot of social media presence about quitting breastfeeding and doing it in order to support your mental health. And we feel very strongly about that.
Especially this kind of concept of other professionals giving you permission, quote unquote, to quit breastfeeding in order to make you feel better. I think is something that's I've seen more and more in social media, and on the surface, it seems really helpful. But underneath, I think it's really problematic.
Yeah, the good intentions are there because they want parents to be able to function, but there's things that are lacking within our healthcare system that prevents parents from getting real help.
And I feel like that concept of providing an easy out for parents it really resonates with providers who don't have a lot of time and are looking to make sure that they keep this family as safe as possible. Yeah. That kind of gentle reminder that, hey, you don't have to keep doing this, right? Which in a broader conversation could be helpful, but when you're not providing the support to actually make that decision in an informed way, it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm. So we wanted to talk about some studies today that highlight the link between breastfeeding and mental health. And we also want to bring light to the fact that there's a lot of nuance in this conversation that gets missed. And so I think it was you brought up Kathleen Kendall-Tackett's research.
And she's been around for a really long time. When I was postpartum with my son, who's going to be 12, her research was what I read when I was trying to deconstruct what part of my mental health was being affected by breastfeeding and what part of it was being impacted by things like inflammation and stress and maybe a bit of a lack of support, even though I had more support than other people. So Kathy Kendall-Tackett does deep dives into women's health research with breastfeeding, depression, trauma, health psychology, stuff like that. And she's done a number of studies that actually show that breastfeeding helps lower your stress hormones and can reduce inflammation. And that's important because inflammation is linked to depression. But it's also, it goes deeper than that into things like nipple pain and how disrupting those hormones that are supposed to protect our mental health postpartum is really easy as being uncomfortable. So if we're not helping people figure out what's disrupting their stress hormones and the things that lower their cortisol, then we might be overlooking a thing that can mitigate their mental health as well.
Yeah. There's so many other factors that could be happening in a person's life that may be contributing to their mental health struggles, and we're so quick to just blame it on the struggles of breastfeeding. It's really normal for breastfeeding to take 1 to 2 months to establish and figure out and finally feel like you have a rhythm with. So I almost feel like we're also failing parents in the prenatal stage of not preparing them for this reality of like, yes, it's going to take some time and some effort. And what people do you have around you that can support you in establishing this and feeling like you've got a good team around you and you have the knowledge and the support?
Yeah.
One other thing that we may not know too is that when we wean quickly or when we drop our feeds quickly, that can cause a hormonal crash.
And I think parents talk about this, or they know about it maybe in terms of like when they're weaning an older baby. I've seen a lot of discussion around, you can mitigate those hormonal experiences by doing it slowly over time.
Mhm.
But quite often, if we have someone where breastfeeding isn't going well when they're early postpartum, we don't pay as much attention to slowly decreasing milk removal over time if that's what they need to do. And I feel like it just shows again how intricately linked those hormones and mental health pieces are. If weaning really, really fast, even when you wean at 2 years, can increase your anxiety, for example, then clearly they're very reliant on each other, those pieces of your brain, the hormones and the anxiety and depression. So I think that is the most helpful thing for parents, is giving them that evidence-based information before they are actually in the throes of a brand new baby. Like you said,
Yeah.
antenatal education is everything. And then that way they've learned it already and they don't have to learn it newly when they are also sleep deprived, and bringing home a whole human being.
Yeah.
One of the other things that came up when we were looking into this was the concept of um, breastfeeding making you lose sleep. And I want to touch on that really quickly
Yes.
because that kind of ties into that entire mental health game.
Yeah.
Actually, exclusive breastfeeding is linked to better sleep for parents and babies. And parents
Hmm.
who are exclusively breastfeeding get a little bit more sleep on any given night than their formula feeding counterparts. So, again, assuming that breastfeeding is going the way that it should and that you have the support that you need. So that's that really
Yeah.
important mitigating kind of piece, that if it's not going well and
Hmm.
you don't have the support, then that might not be true. But
Yes.
on its own, that kind of myth that breastfeeding parents get less sleep is not true.
No, it's not. And so then I think parents listening to this would be like, well, then what do I do? Because breastfeeding is not going well
Yeah.
and I'm not sleeping.
Yeah.
So now, like, you expect me to just keep on trying and not use formula.
Yeah.
And this is not what we're saying. We are saying we want to see changes within the system. We want to see parents receiving better help,
Yeah.
better strategies, better sleep setups, more education in, like we said, prenatally.
Yep.
There are things that we can do to work towards getting you better sleep and better breastfeeding, right? There's strategies that we can include.
Yeah. One of my clients that I saw recently, we made a whole like protected sleep plan for this single protected kind of 4 to 5 hour chunk of sleep for her at the beginning of the night, because that does play heavily into how well you feel. And I know for myself, lack of sleep was the number one trigger for my anxiety. So I had to figure out what it was that allowed me to get the best sleep. And a lot of parents find that it's their first chunk of sleep at the beginning of the night, which is so hard because you have this baby and now you're like, oh, I just put the baby down to sleep finally. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to load my dishwasher and text 4 friends and watch an episode of something with my husband. And then
Yeah.
you get that one kind of 3 or 4 hour chunk, maybe if your baby's willing, and then the rest of the night is a little busier. And so I'm always
Hmm.
telling people, I'm like, you leave everything that you don't have to do right now, and you just go to sleep as soon as your baby goes down for that first sleep of the night, because it's probably going to be your longest chunk.
Yes. Yeah. And then there's families who are starting to choose to combo feed because of this lack of sleep as well. So they start taking shifts with their partner, and their partner gives a bottle in the middle of the night without realizing that this is going to disrupt the production of their milk supply. And so there's a lot of like backtracking that we have to do sometimes, or for myself, anyways, is like, okay, let's remove this piece,
Yeah.
add in this piece. Let's, work out a system that's going to protect your milk supply and get you sleep.
Yeah. And I'll tell parents that we're building a toolbox, that
Yeah.
every feed requires kind of similar tools, but they might not be the exact same tools. And sometimes the tools are feed the baby, remove milk, and everybody go back to sleep. And
Yes.
sometimes the tools are, okay, we have a little bit more time and energy at this feed. We're going to try some things like different positions or supplementing at the breast or something that makes me feel like, oh, I'm working towards what my goal is. But you're not going to
Hmm.
default to the same tool at every feed, because you're not the same person or the same amount of rested at every feed that you
Yes.
have. So the more tools you have, the more in control you feel. And that's
Hmm.
where that really good support can actually be super supportive of mental health while you're still reaching your breastfeeding goals or working towards them.
Yeah, because it looks at the whole the family as they are, rather than a blanketed, this is what we do, this is what every parent does,
Yeah,
this is what works for every parent, because it just doesn't work that way. It needs to be individualized.
very. Yeah. That's what I love about home visits, actually. It's my favorite thing to go into somebody's home and be able to see a little bit about what does your setup look like and how can we make things
Hmm.
for you within your own setup.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And then, there's aside from sleep, there's also possible trauma that people might be dealing with. And that might be trauma before pregnancy and birth, that might be trauma from pregnancy and birth. And so those are pieces that we want to work with within the breastfeeding system too, because I think a lot of people don't realize that the oxytocin is really helpful for people who are dealing with trauma.
And I also learned, I mean, everything kind of comes back to your own experience in the end. But when I was feeding my son, um, there wasn't initially that oxytocin letdown for me. I didn't feel the effects of that. And
Right.
I had a lot of pain, and we went through a lot of breastfeeding difficulties. And eventually, it was when he was 4 months old. We ended up out in Albany with Dr. Kotlau having a tongue tie release there.
Hmm.
And at that appointment, when his tongue was fully released, I had an oxytocin kind of like response for the first time ever breastfeeding.
Oh,
It
interesting.
was a wild ride, and I was like, oh, this is why people keep doing this. If I felt like this every time I nursed my baby, I would be like, give me that baby. Like, I want this all.
Yeah.
It was like I almost fell asleep in the chair in his waiting room.
Oh,
And
lovely.
it made me kind of think about, oh, what if some of the things that we attribute to parental anxiety when they're nursing their baby are actually their warning bells going off saying something's not quite right. This cascade of hormones isn't actually happening for me the way that it should. And we
Yeah.
should be listening to that because it tells us
Hmm.
that we can investigate down a certain path and make sure that that's not what's going on before we jump to, oh, you have anxiety and depression, and breastfeeding's causing it, or the stress of feeding your baby is causing it, or whatever we like to kind of default to in our language. That was my big reminder that, hey, when the hormones are working properly, even if you do have some anxiety or depression on board, um, that can actually be super helpful.
Yeah, and then there's the neurodivergence piece too,
Mhm.
right? And I guess trauma could be lumped into that category a little bit, but there's also people who just cannot stand the sensation of breastfeeding, um, the physical sensation, but also the hormonal sensation. When we were thinking of Deemer as well.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of nuance with this conversation. I think there's a lot of pieces that isn't being put on stage on social media.
Yeah, we're seeing this very simple, the answer at the end, a blog post about like why I gave my client
Yeah,
permission to stop breastfeeding. And
right.
that's not, I mean, maybe for that person, that was actually the thing that needed to happen. And
Yeah, that does
yeah,
happen.
when you have a relationship with a family, there is sometimes those conversations happen, but it's misleading to put it out there as if that's the answer when actually sometimes it's the thing that's happened because you couldn't find the answers or you don't have the help to look for the answers.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, is we don't know what we don't know. And if we're not being told by our care providers to seek out a certain type of help,
Yeah.
then we're not going to get the help that we need.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Hmm.
So we kind of got all the way to support. That's kind of one of the things that we ended
Yeah.
with, hey, is that it's not the breast
Yeah.
problems that actually cause mood disorders. It can actually be unsupported breastfeeding that causes mood disorders. Not that it's hard, but that it's hard without help.
Yeah. And all of us as IBCLCs, we would be negligent if we didn't actually use formula or suggest
Yeah.
formula when it's needed.
Yeah.
So, what needs to get across is that we need to actually fund unlimited access to the right support, the right clinical support.
Yeah. And the type of support that's important to the parent, I think, is like, that's where the bottom line is.
Yeah.
You want to have access to something that will be really helpful to you and that's in line with what your values are and what your vision of your postpartum looked like, because that's important too.
Yeah, and you brought up another study, a Calgary study.
I love this study. It's from 2016, and it was done in Calgary with these parents that they followed from birth to 6 months. I have looked high and low for another study that looks at exactly what they looked at, and I can't find one. So if anybody knows of one, please send it my way. But basically, they looked at the number of them that had feeding difficulties in that time period, which was about 88%. The amount of support that they got, which was most of them, 97% of them got some sort of support, but they also said that sometimes it was support they didn't want or unsolicited advice. But then they looked at the quality of that support and what the mental health outcome was. So there was a large number of people who had negative support, and about 15% of people had postpartum depression at 6 months, which is kind of what we see in the normal population. But of those, a small number of those, about I can't remember, 30 of them maybe got positive support, what they perceived as a really positive support experience. And their risk of postpartum depression actually dropped to just over 5% at 6 months. And the piece that I found really interesting was it didn't matter what the breastfeeding outcome was. So their perception of support was more important than whether or not they actually ended up exclusively breastfeeding their baby. And that is I think that's a huge deal, because you can have the outcome that you don't want, but if you feel like you were really well supported and you really went down every avenue and you explored all the things that were important to you, that even the having to stop breastfeeding or only partially breastfeed didn't matter to these parents who had positive support. They still had better mental health outcomes at 6 months. And I think that's really cool, because we see that in birth too, that it's not actually about whether or not you get the birth you want. It's about how well supported and how individualized your care was during your labor and your birth experience. That's what parents carry with them. And I would love to see more of this research in breastfeeding, because it makes sense to me that this would also hold through your postpartum period.
Yeah, that study says a lot about it.
Yeah. I want to see them do more.
Yeah, me too. And so, I mean, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, like, we were inspired to do this episode because we're seeing a lot of this narrative around social media, and we're seeing these really sly formula marketing ads that are being done by influencers, but they're not a lactation and an infant feeding specialist. And so when they are giving this advice, it can be very damaging. Yeah. And not only that, there is the WHO's International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, and it's meant to protect parents from misleading formula marketing. And yet there's this blurred line and these loopholes that these social media people have found to promote formula, saying it's okay, just quit breastfeeding and switch to our formula because it's just like breast milk and your mental health will be saved.
Or you can safely combo feed without impacting your supply.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a lucky unicorn, I'm sure there are people out there who have been able to do that, and that's fine. Or if you're a person who wants to do that and you go into it with your eyes wide open, you know that you might make a little bit less breast milk if you choose that route, but that's the balance that's right for your family. But I think when vulnerable parents see that messaging that, oh, you can combo feed and it's going to be just fine, and then they don't get any more information than that, 3 months later, they're really sometimes angry that they were misled that way.
Yeah. They're missing the caveat of, like, you can do this, but there's these repercussions if you do choose to do it this way. And that's fine. If you have been given that information and you still want to choose that, that's great. That's what we want. We want you to be informed to make that decision. our problem with this marketing is that parents aren't being informed, plain and simple.
Yeah, 100%. And they don't know the qualifications maybe of the people who are giving the information, or there's that nuance of being paid or being linked on social media to boost your engagement, getting something out of that partnership, which we're not allowed to do. That's part of our code and part of our licensing. So it can be particularly frustrating to see people doing it, even if it comes from a good place for them, even if it's something that worked for them and made their lives easier and made their mental health better. Pairing up with a formula company to then sell that on social media is hard to watch.
Yes. Yeah. Very hard to watch. My my heart rate goes up.
Yeah, and I feel like, what you were saying before, feeding the baby is always the bottom line. We are always going to recommend that parents supplement in a way that's appropriate to them. But that requires more information about their own situation and a little bit more careful and nuanced attention to what their goals are and when are we revisiting this plan to make sure that it's actually working for you and that it's not detrimentally affecting your chances of continuing to breastfeed.
Yes. Yeah. Continued support. Huge. Yeah, because we as IBCLCs, we also do a massive health intake too. So we need to understand that piece for you as well, not just your home situation and your lifestyle, but also your health history, what happened during your birth, if you have any chronic illness. All of this needs to be taken into account before you can make an informed decision. It's also frustrating, speaking of the health piece, when we think of any other gland in the body dysfunctioning, our care provider will do a deep dive into figuring out why it's not functioning. But when it comes to breastfeeding, our breasts are glands. When it's not functioning and producing enough milk, why are we not doing deep dives into why it's not producing milk?
Yeah, and why don't we have the support for doing those investigations in a way that is actually evidence-based and makes sense, rather than not being allowed to order certain tests in certain provinces, or they're harder to get, and so we just don't default to doing them. There's especially with lower milk supply, there's a litany of testing that they recommend on, I think it's the Low Milk Supply Foundation. They have that really great page that has the provider facing things that are recommended to rule out before you tell somebody that they have low milk supply for an unknown cause. And it's a long list. It's a really long list. And to my knowledge, there are very few places in Canada that would offer that thoroughness of testing before we jumped to that diagnosis at the end, which I'm not even allowed to make. So it can be really hard watching people want to have those answers and not have access to that kind of testing.
Yes. Yeah. So another gap in the care that we're seeing for sure.
Totally. I have a kind of story that fits into this about a gal that I talked to a long time ago, 10 or 12 years ago now. She was telling me about how her breastfeeding experience went with her first, because I always ask, when I have somebody, how did things go? And what do you want this time? And do you want something different, or do you want it to be the same? And she was telling me that she was really surprised with her first baby because she, on the side as a hobby, ran ultra marathons, and she had done so for a number of years, and so she was in really good physical shape, and she had so much support from all of the healthcare professionals in her life. When she was running these ultra marathons, she had fractured her feet and had shin splints and needed insoles and needed to see physio and OT and all these things that were going to help her keep on functioning as a runner. And her doctor was really on board, and he kept on telling her it was really good for her mental health and it was really good for her body long term to do these types of exercise. And then she had her first baby, and she was having breastfeeding troubles, and she went to her same providers, and everyone that she saw basically said, well, if it's getting too hard, you can quit. Like, that's okay.
Ugh.
And yeah, that's kind of what that was the look on her face too. She kind of
Yeah.
said to me, she was like, I anticipated, like, at a minimum, I would have as much support for this thing that I'm doing that reduces my risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer and, could mitigate my risk of diabetes and hypertension later in life. Like, all of these things, not just that are good for my baby, but that are very good for my body. I expected that I would have access to the same type of specialty problem solving that I had access to for my hobby. And
Right.
she was really angry about it. She said it was, she didn't, she still was feeling the feelings when she was in labor with her second baby.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Because
Yeah.
she just thought it didn't make any sense to her that she was able to get that help in one area, but not in another area.
Yeah. Wow, that's so frustrating. Because there's also the piece of breastfeeding grief, which I think a lot of people don't
Hmm.
really
Yeah,
anticipate when things don't go well.
yeah,
My oldest is 15 and I still have breastfeeding grief around how our story went. And it's softened a bit because as an IBCLC now, I realize what I didn't
with a lot
know.
more grace for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, but that stuff sticks with you and yeah, that makes me sad for her.
Yeah. I mean, she was fiery about it. She was, not willing. They still breastfed successfully, but she just was really up in arms about the lack of actual support that she got and the links that she had to go to find that support herself, which I hear in my clients quite often that they really wish that it hadn't been as hard to get the help that they needed, that they didn't have to go there and advocate for themselves so hard in order to be connected.
Yeah, or get on Google, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, my people in my community find me on Google and they're like, "How come nobody told me that you're here?"
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good plug for the BCLCA website. So if you're looking
Yes.
for a lactation consultant, you can go to the BCLCA website, and there's a list of us. Anybody who has a membership is listed there, so it can help you if you're looking
Yeah.
for somebody.
So when we talk about what support actually looks like,
Mhm.
um, for those who may not know what an IBCLC does, we spend years training to become an international board certified lactation consultant. We are required to take a board exam, and then we are required to recertify every 5 years with 75 CERPs. So we are the top gold standard of clinical support in lactation and infant feeding. And so when you see us, like we said earlier, we do a big health intake. We want to understand your whole story. I don't know about you, Erin, but my consultations take up to 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm sitting around
Um,
somewhere between 2 and 3,
you're the same.
depending on what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, like if we're looking at pumping and we're looking at latching and we're looking at the baby's health and the parent's health and all these things, there's a lot to go over. And so, we bring a lot of understanding and compassion. We know that it's not gonna look the same for everybody. We're here to look into what is going to work for you short term and where we want to be long
Yeah.
term. Or I say we, but I mean the family. And I get included in that because I'm supporting them in doing
Mhm.
that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
agreed. And I quite often tell people that 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 goal that those goalposts might move for them as they're
Yeah.
moving through that journey. So I like to check in kind of around the 2 week mark with a bit of a survey that says, where are things on a scale of 0 to 10? Do you feel like they could get better? Or have they improved more than you were anticipating? And you're like, no, this is really great. Like, I didn't think I would get to this point, because that lets me know, do we need to touch base again? Maybe do a follow-up visit, or is there some other way that I can help you? So that checking back in, and I'm really big on text support, so I do a little bit of that in the couple of weeks after I see somebody, just to be able to answer really simple questions.
Mhm.
And that looks different for everybody. I'll tell people, I'll be like, are you a check-in person, or like, should I just wait to hear from you? Because some people are like, don't text me every 2 days, there, and that's stupid. Um, and
Mhm.
then some people are like, please text me every 2 days, because I won't remember that I have access to you
Mhm.
because I'm so tired. So that's part of
Right.
that expectation setting, is like, what kind of learner are you? How much interaction do you need? getting to know a family it's a really intimate thing to kind of be brought into their world for a little while, and yeah, it just feels like a gift every time I get invited into somebody's house that they're trusting me enough to bring me into this really special place where they're feeling really vulnerable. So I
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things.
I feel the same. Yeah, it is really special. And sometimes we will collaborate with other
Mhm.
providers. So if we feel that a family may benefit from seeing an additional practitioner, like a bodywork practitioner or a counselor, we have those resources to send you to as well. I personally try not to send people in all sorts of different directions. So if there's a way that we can sort of try and mitigate things at home
Mhm.
and do some things in the interim, then we will do that. But sometimes I do refer out for sure.
And I mean, that's a great line to talk about too, because I found it very empowering to be able to do some of those things for my baby. Whether it was, some oral exercises or some body movements, stuff like that. I
Hmm.
found it really made me feel more connected, and it made me feel like I was actually helping him to be able to
Yeah.
do those things. And there was a point at which he needed a little bit more help than I could give him. And then I was really grateful for a referral to somebody else. So I try and remember that and ask people also, would it feel more overwhelming for you to do these things on your own? Or
Right.
would it actually be helpful for you to learn how to meet your baby's needs this way, even if it takes a little bit of time?
Yeah. And, that just helps parents feel like they're not failing too, because it's all so brand new. They can kind of feel like with their struggles, they can feel like they're not doing it right. Or they are seeing other healthcare providers and they're going to them with these specific challenges, and the providers are going, I don't see anything wrong. And so they get into this like crazy making loop like, okay, well, nothing's wrong, but why am I struggling so hard?
Yeah. Yeah. Part
You
of
know?
my prenatal education is actually having like a really focused chat about how to communicate with your providers, because I feel like a lot of people feel that disconnect, but it's sometimes because the language isn't matching up. And so what we talk about is there's a difference between saying feeding isn't going well, I don't think it's going how it should, and then your provider's stuck being like, well, how do I unravel that in a 15-minute appointment? That's really hard. It's very
Yes.
non-specific.
Yeah.
Versus if you're well educated in advance, you can go into your provider's office and say, I'm not noticing swallows. I don't see my baby swallowing frequently. I don't think that the pees and poops are enough. I'm having pain that is this consistency every time I feed. If you're specific with your words, and you give
Hmm.
them the information they need to be able to be like, okay, let's start looking in this direction, that can be a lot more helpful and have way better outcomes than kind of just going in and being like, I don't know what's wrong, something's wrong. Um,
Great tip.
which is
Yeah.
hard. I mean, most parents feel that way, right? So it comes back to
Yeah.
that pre-education piece of the more you can learn before your baby is born, and the more you can learn how to communicate specific things like that, the better your experience might be.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great tip. We should start teaching prenatal classes together.
It'd be really I would love to do like virtual kind of monthly education sessions. That's one of the things that we
Yeah.
were talking about doing when we first opened up our business, and then it got too busy and we've never managed to make it there.
Oh, well, that's nice that you're busy though.
It's been a really good couple of years here. We've been able to meet like an incredible amount of families. I think Saturday I'll be seeing my 178th client in 2 weeks. It's pretty
Wow.
exciting. Yeah, really lucky.
Yeah.
The welcome has been warm. And I think that
Yeah.
comes from also building those relationships and taking time in the community that you're in to really put those roots down and figure out how do we become a better group of human beings to look after our newly parenting parents.
Yeah. A little bit more consistency.
Yep. Yeah, and the willingness
Hmm.
to reach out and have those connections and sometimes hard conversations, or be like, "Hey, what was happening here? Like, let's look at this again. Can we figure out where this miscommunication happened, or can you provide me with some resources about what you were talking about? Because I've never heard of that before.
And we're trying to keep it affordable for families, not pay out of pocket, but there are ways of including this kind of support in the public health system.
That's something like the Goldfarb Clinic in Montreal, where then you can go and get that done and have it covered. Do you know what I mean? We're
Right.
gonna
Yeah.
try, if we're gonna say that we care about that, um,
Yeah.
then, but there's so many people that want and need it, then
Yeah.
why are we not also providing an alternative that actually fits within our public healthcare model, if that's the actual concern? If the finances are actually what we're concerned about,
Yeah.
then we should be providing alternatives.
Yeah.
I think we kind of looped around to the bottom line of it being that we, as providers, don't get to tell people what's too hard for them. And
Yeah.
we don't get to gatekeep their experience that way. So everybody has a different line of where they are willing to, they're like, I'm willing to go this far or not, and not any further. And we should keep in mind that some people want to do hard things and they're really
Yeah.
motivated to do a hard thing, and it's okay for them to want to do that hard thing. Our job is then to support that, and that doesn't look like giving them an easy out and saying, oh, it's okay if you quit. I support you quitting, because that's, I mean,
Yeah.
why are you reaching out for help if that's what people are going to say to you?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all about asking those questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also journeying alongside people when what is possible changes for them, and pointing out the things. My mom has this really great, I don't know where she got this, but she's my business partner and does the other half of our business, but she's on a medical leave right now. And she tells parents to get a win jar. And just every time there's something that happens that they love about feeding, or their baby does something that they weren't able to do before, or they have a stretch of sleep that they didn't have before, they put a little pebble in their win jar, so that they can see over time how many positive things are actually happening. Because we don't, our brains, especially, I mean, especially us neurodivergent folks, but everybody, our brains don't respond the same way to those positive feedback experiences, those tiny ones through the day, as they do to negative. We tend to remember negative things more. And if you have a visual way of seeing, oh, 10 good things happened today, it can really impact how motivated you feel to keep going. And so I
Beautiful.
love it. I talk to people about it a
Yeah.
lot, about if they're feeling really stuck, how can you keep track of your wins? Because there are
Yeah.
those.
I love that idea. It's so simple too.
Hmm.
Just a good visual. Because, yeah, I'm a very visual person too. That would have worked for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, same.
She sounds, yeah, she sounds so great. I'm going to have to interview her.
She taught me everything. It's been like a
Cool.
gift to be able to work with her. It's been pretty great.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I go now with people, is even if this looks different than what you envisioned, it can still look like something that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And the science says breastfeeding helps mental health.
Yep,
It supports it. It doesn't take away from it.
totally.
You just need the right support. And if you can't find that right support, keep asking.
Yeah, yeah, and push a little
Yeah.
bit harder, and
Yeah.
yeah, just don't give up if giving up isn't, I mean, giving up is such a stupid way of framing it, but don't stop if stopping isn't what you wanted.
Yeah.
Keep on asking for the amount of help that you deserve and the quality of help that you deserve, to be able to
Yeah.
actually exhaust all of those options if that's what you want.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If this conversation resonated with you today, you can connect with either myself or Erin. Erin, do you offer virtual consults at all?
So yeah, so it's something that we're slowly getting up and running, and Celine has been doing more of them than I have, but we do offer a virtual consult option on our website, and as well as our home visits.
Okay, great. And do you want to let people know what your website is?
Yeah, right now it's just either Instagram at Sweet Spot Lactation, or it's our Jane booking site, which is sweetspotlactation.janeapp.com.
Okay, awesome. And you can connect with me at brimfamilycare.com for in-person and online consults. Thanks for tuning in today. Erin will be back with me to co-host another episode in the near future, so be sure to leave us a comment if there's anything that you'd like to hear us chat about. And if you'd like to support the podcast, feel free to buy me a coffee. See you next time.